Good.
Okay, so this is part B of the pharmacy inventory management. The part we've gone over before, that was the markup and markdown. Very first question is blank is inventory that is continuously kept up to date. And so you'll see here, what is the inventory that's perpetually, or it's inventory that's continuously kept up to date? So number one, the answer is perpetual inventory. And when we're in class, it's easier to see. We have a notebook. Every single time you dispense a Control 2 prescription, you have to document the date, you have to document the quantity, the pharmacist that filled it, their initials, the technician that typed, and you subtract it so that it's just like a checkbook register. And you guys don't use checkbooks, but basically, if I have 1,000 tablets on hand in stock, and that's what shows up in my perpetual inventory log, and then I dispense a prescription for 100 tablets, once I mark it through there, my balance is going to show I have 900 tablets on hand. If you go check inventory, I have 900 tablets in inventory. So the perpetual inventory, that's just at any time you can check that inventory, it's going to be accurate. So I mentioned the C2 prescription being filled. The pharmacist writes the prescription number, date, and quantity. And you're going to find in real practice that as the pharmacy technician, your pharmacist that you work beside is going to have you fill that all out for them, and they'll just initial it. So the most important thing about a perpetual inventory, if a compliance officer from the state board drops in to a hospital or retail pharmacy at any time, they can ask for the perpetual inventory record for Schedule 2 drugs. They can open any page, and whatever balance shows on that page should be exactly the same as whatever balance you have on hand. So federal law requires a physical inventory be taken for the drugs in a pharmacy once every 2 years. So question number 2 is federal law requires every blank years. So it's federal law requires we take a complete inventory every 2 years. Federal law requires that you keep the hard copies of your invoices. So when we get invoices for when we place an order and a tote comes in, inside the tote there's going to be an invoice, and then the invoice you're going to use to make sure you've received everything stated on that invoice. But you're going to have 3 different files for your invoices, 3 different types of invoice. One is for the majority of the drugs in the pharmacy. They're not controlled or they're over the counter. That's one file. The second file is for Schedule 3 through 5 drugs, and the last file is for Schedule 2 drugs. So it's just the same as how you file hard copies of prescriptions. You're going to have 3 separate files for written prescriptions. You have 3 separate copies for your invoices. Something else I try to get people, I'll be saying this frequently, lots of redundancy, but 2 years, that's the magic number. With the exception of HIPAA, you have to maintain records for 6 years. Everything else, federal law, is 2 years. So you have an inventory every 2 years. You have to file your original invoices and prescriptions and maintain them for 2 years. Don't be confused. In Texas, we take inventory every year. It's taken the last day of April at close of business or the first day of May before business opens. So a state law can be stricter than federal law, but when you take the exam, it's based on federal law. And so if you're asked a question about how long must you maintain the files or hard copies or anything, it's going to be 2 years. So what is inventory value? And so that's number 3. It's the answer, it's the cost to acquire. And what does to acquire mean? That's to obtain, to acquire. So what is the cost to buy the entire stock on a given day? So it includes everything in the pharmacy, the prescription drugs, OTC, and anything else that's front end like durable medical equipment. Now, something that's important to understand is the cost of drugs can increase for any number of reasons. And here's just an example. In January, a bottle of 500 generic Keflex 250 milligram costs $300, but they anticipate this coming month the price will be $260. Now, why the increase in price? Well, it's because cephalexin, the raw ingredients obtained in China, and now there's kind of a slowdown in availability of medicines, or at least it's anticipated. So even if you bought a bottle and you have that in stock, when you're counting your inventory, you're not looking at how much you paid for it when you bought it. You're looking at how much is it going to cost to replace it if I had to buy another bottle today. So if you had 250 capsules remaining when taking inventory on 5/1, it's not going to be $15. It's going to be $130. It's going to be worth half of whatever it would cost to buy that whole bottle on that day. So turnover, that's the next one. So number 4, the blank is blank, and it's turnover. That's the number of times whole inventory sells out per year. And you'll see in the practice tip, it says a ratio, turnover ratio can be applied to an individual product as well to the inventory as a whole. And by that, it just means if I want to look at one medication and I want to see how many times within 1 year is that bottle being replaced on the shelf each month, each week. So I can look at an individual item or I can look at my entire inventory. So you want a higher turnover rate. A high turnover rate means you're constantly replacing, you're constantly replenishing that item. If you have a very low turnover, that means the item is sitting on your shelf, you're not dispensing it, and it's inventory that's tied up. So low turnover indicates stock that's sitting on the shelves for too long. Our goal in pharmacy is 10 to 12 times a year, but 8 to 10 is more typical. I'll tell you, when I worked at Walmart, we received a bonus based on our profitability and based on turnover of our drugs. So if somebody didn't understand how turnover worked, it was important enough to learn, because one year I got a $78,000 bonus. So a turnover of 12 per year suggests that inventory is sold and repurchased every 30 days. That would be ideal. So I want to make sure. Okay, it looks like I got 10 people on here. Great. We're picking up speed. All right. Hi, Vanessa. Okay, so Kyle. Good morning, Kyle. Cynthia. And so everybody, if you didn't hear, you want to mute your. You guys are terrific. Okay, and so for those of you that are just joining after the fact, there's a handout that goes along with this that you're going to be filling out and submitting for an assignment grade. So at a minimum, if you'll just get a blank sheet of paper, I'll let you know the answers to be filling in. So after the presentation, you can print that out and supply the answers. So number 1 was perpetual inventory. Number 2, it's every 2 years, federal law. Number 3, inventory value is the cost to replace or acquire stock on. I'm sorry, the value of entire stock on a given day. Number 4, turnover. That's the number of times you have whole inventory turnover. Now we're on number 5, and it's just asking for the formula. So turnover is calculated by using this formula, and it's your acquisition investments over the current inventory value. And so of number 5 on your worksheet, it has this written out: inventory turnover, and then it's got a blank, and then it's already got current inventory value. So you need to write down annual acquisition investments. And all that means, annual acquisition investments, how much money did you spend last year buying your drugs? So this is a simpler way of wording it. How much money was spent on your drugs in the year? So if your current inventory is $30,000, that means if I went to my shelves, let's say the shelves in our classroom, and we had $30,000 in drugs on it, and we spent $360,000 during the last 12 months, what's our turnover rate? So basically, this means we're keeping about $30,000 on our shelves at all the time. We replace this much throughout the year, so our turnover. So would that be a good turnover or a bad turnover rate? Very good, guys. That's a great turnover. You get a big bonus. So here's another example. It's the one I gave just a minute ago was a little bit easier to follow. This one's just $60,000 per month. You've got $140,000 in stock. So you want to calculate the turnover. Since we know we've got $60,000 per month, and there's how many months in a year? There's 12 months in a year. So that's how much we've spent per year. That's my last name. Then you divide the annual acquisitions by your current value. So we're given that, we have 440,000 in stock. So I think there's two of these on y'all's exercise when you go back the second exercise for the day. So which products, these are things that you need to ask yourself. And there's a new specialty certification for technicians. After working 1 year, you take a course and you have to take an exam, but you can become a certified specialist in inventory management. This is very valuable. If you think about it, if you have a pharmacy, and it's very common for a pharmacy nowadays in retail to have $4 million worth of inventory. So a pharmacy is going to be willing to invest a decent pay and a full-time individual, a tech specialist, to manage that inventory. I've given you all examples several times. There's a drug called Procrit or Epigen, and it can be $6,000 to $8,000 just for a box for 1 month. And so that's an example of something you want an employee who's checking to make sure you don't happen to have 3 boxes that are sitting there expiring if you only need 1 on the shelf, or do you even need that 1? Like, is it something you can order immediately before you need it? So here are questions that everybody, and by the way, when you're in a pharmacy, there might be one designated technician who is responsible for specifically focusing on the inventory, but everybody, every single employee, every member of the team is responsible. When you put up a drug order, you want to make sure and put the drugs that are expiring, the most recent. Oh, if we run out of time, guys, I'm going to start another meeting and we'll pick up. So we just got 10 minutes. So what I'll probably do is stop this in a minute and then send y'all another invitation, because I know we'll be able to finish up the rest of and it'll be a lot of time. So, but these are questions you ask yourself. Oh, again, if a technician is putting drugs up, the order comes in, you've checked it against the invoice, everything that was on the invoice has come in, you're going to put it on the shelf. It's tempting sometimes because it's less trouble to just put it in front. If you do that, though, you're going to be dispensing it, and there's going to be older medicines that are expiring sooner, they get pushed to the back. So you don't ever want to do that. That's called stock rotation. How much of the drug needs to be kept in stock. You're going to know if you see 12 bottles on the shelf and the space doesn't even look like it would accommodate it, you need to ask the pharmacist, is this right? Do we need to be keeping this many bottles? And then, is there sufficient shelf space for new products? Should other item counts be decreased? Example of this is, let's say that there is an item you need a whole lot of bottles on the shelf, but there's no space allotted. Those bottles are going to fall off the shelf. They're going to get put in the wrong place, any number of things. So it's very important to have adequate shelf space. So purchasing, it's usually initiated by technicians, except for Schedule II drugs. Number 7 says C2 drugs are ordered, and it asks what's the DEA blank to order. And that's a DEA 222, and to be technical, it's a 222C, but you're just going to most of the time see it as 222, which is easy to remember because it's a Control 2 drug. In retail pharmacy, medications are usually ordered daily and received the next day. This is called just-in-time ordering. So you're not keeping this inventory, these dollars tied up on your shelf, sitting whenever it's possible to order a medicine, have it the next day, and be able to fill a prescription. You're not losing prescriptions. That's ideal. So what we're going to do at this point right here, I'm going to stop the share. This is going to be recorded, and I'm going to send you all another invitation, and we'll pick up right here. Hey guys, so I'll see y'all in just a minute. Let's see who else is still here. Yeah, so you'll be getting an announcement in just a minute, and we'll pick up and finish the second half.